Getting old today is inconvenient, but modern life has built an entire support system around it. Your eyesight gets worse, so you get glasses. Your teeth disappear, so you get dentures. Your knees stop cooperating, so you get medication, surgery, or one of those chairs that slowly lifts you into the air like the world's least exciting ejector seat. Now remove all of that. No doctors, no painkillers, no glasses, no retirement home, no supermarket full of food that requires almost no chewing. Instead, you are 50 years old, living 40,000 years ago, and your group has decided to move again. They need to follow the animals, find water, avoid predators, carry children, tools, food, animal skins, and everything else they own across miles of rough ground. Your back hurts, your teeth are worn down, you cannot run like you used to. And nobody has invented the phrase take it easy yet. So, what happened to you? What did ancient humans actually do when someone became old? Did the entire group slow down for them? Did elderly people keep working until their bodies physically gave out? Or did they take on a completely different role? Because old age creates a strange problem in the prehistoric world. An older person needs food, protection, and time, but they may no longer be able to chase animals, carry heavy loads, or escape danger. On paper, they look like a burden, and yet old people survived. Some survived for years with missing teeth, damaged limbs, severe arthritis, and injuries that would have made everyday life extremely difficult, which means ancient communities were doing something to keep them alive. But they may not have been doing it simply because they felt sorry for them. An older person possessed something no younger member of the group could have: decades of information. They remembered droughts, dangerous winters, animal migrations, poisonous plants, family conflicts, successful hunts, and every terrible idea the group had already tried. In a world with no books, no maps, and no way to search large cat following us, what do we do? An elderly person could be incredibly valuable. They were human storage. But that was only part of it, because the way ancient humans dealt with old age depended on where they lived, how much food they had, whether the group was moving, and what the older person could still contribute. Sometimes old age may have brought care and respect, sometimes it meant more responsibility, and sometimes it probably meant that survival became brutally difficult. So, what was life actually like for an elderly prehistoric human? To answer that, we first need to destroy one of the biggest myths about the ancient world: the idea that nobody lived long enough to become old. You have probably heard that ancient humans had a life expectancy of around 30. And technically, estimates like that can be accurate. They're also extremely easy to misunderstand. A life expectancy of 30 does not mean everyone reached 29, looked suspiciously tired for a few months, and then died during a very disappointing birthday party. It is an average calculated from birth, and in ancient populations, childhood was incredibly dangerous. Many children died during birth, infancy, or the first few years of life. There were no antibiotics, vaccines, sterile operating rooms, or emergency departments. An infection, an accident, or a period of food shortage could kill a child very quickly. Those early deaths dragged the average down, but if you survived childhood, your chances changed. Studies of modern hunter gatherers cannot tell us exactly how Paleolithic people lived. The environments, histories, and cultures are different, but they can show us what human longevity looks like without modern medicine. Among several traditionally living populations, the most common age of adult death has been estimated somewhere between the late 60s and late 70s. Most people did not reach those ages because many still died young, but some absolutely did. Old age is not a modern invention. Humans have been capable of reaching it for a very long time. What may have changed was how often older people appeared. One influential study examined tooth wear in human fossils from different periods. The researchers found that the proportion of older adults increased gradually through human evolution. then rose sharply among early Upper Paleolithic modern humans. In their sample, the number of adults surviving long enough to become potential grandparents increased by roughly 4 times. The fossil record is incomplete, and estimating age from ancient remains is difficult. Still, something important appears to have been happening. By the Upper Paleolithic, more human communities may have contained 3 living generations at the same time: children, parents, and grandparents. That sounds ordinary today. At the time, it may have transformed human society. Once older adults became common, information could survive longer than a single generation. Imagine that your group experiences a drought. The river becomes shallow, animals disappear, plants that normally produce food begin to fail. Most of the younger adults have never seen anything like it. But one older woman remembers a similar drought from 40 years earlier. She remembers another water source several days away, hidden beyond a ridge nobody normally crosses. That memory could save the group. This exact event is hypothetical. We do not have a prehistoric diary saying, "Grandmother found the emergency river today. Very useful." But the principle is real. Humans survive in a complicated ecological niche. Finding food, tracking animals, making tools, treating injuries, navigating landscapes, and reading weather patterns can require years of learning. An older person had spent decades collecting that information. They knew where animals crossed rivers. They knew which plants appeared after heavy rain. They knew which caves flooded during winter. They knew which injuries could be treated and which ones meant serious trouble. Their bodies may have become weaker, but their usefulness did not automatically disappear. In a world without writing, memory was infrastructure, and elderly people carried more of it than anyone else. But knowledge alone does not explain how people with serious physical problems continued surviving. For that, we need to look at the bones. In 2002, archaeologists working at Dmanisi in Georgia discovered the skull of an early human who lived around 1.77 million years ago. This individual had lost all but one tooth several years before death, not several hours before death, not during the incident that killed them, several years earlier. The jawbone had changed around the empty sockets, showing that the teeth had been missing for a long time. That creates an obvious problem. Eating without teeth is difficult now, and we have soup, mashed potatoes, blenders, and yogurt that somehow contains 40 grams of protein. At Dmanisi, the menu was less forgiving. This early human may have selected naturally soft foods. They may have used stone tools to break food into smaller pieces or access soft marrow from bones. Members of the group may also have prepared or shared food. We cannot prove exactly what happened, but severe tooth loss did not immediately end this person's life. Almost 2 million years ago, an individual who could not chew normally continued surviving inside a social group. That tells us something important. Care did not suddenly appear with farming, cities, or civilization. Its roots may be far older, and the evidence becomes even more striking when we look at a Neanderthal called Shanidar 1. Shanidar 1 lived more than 45,000 years ago in what is now northern Iraq. His body had taken an unbelievable amount of damage. He had suffered a serious injury to the left side of his face, which probably reduced his vision. His right forearm and hand were missing or severely underdeveloped. His leg and foot were damaged, affecting the way he walked. He also had large bony growths inside both ear canals, which probably caused major hearing loss. So here is a Neanderthal with impaired movement, limited use of one arm, reduced vision, and serious difficulty hearing. And he survived into older adulthood. We need to be careful here. Disability does not mean helplessness. Shanidar 1 may have adapted remarkably well. He may have gathered food, prepared materials, made tools, maintained fires, taught younger people, or contributed in ways that left no mark on his skeleton. But surviving alone would have been extremely difficult. He could not easily hear predators approaching. He could not run normally. He had limited use of one arm. His continued survival strongly suggests cooperation. Other people probably shared food, offered protection, or adjusted their activities around him. Neanderthals were not mindless brutes wandering around until somebody invented a museum exhibit about them. They were social humans dealing with the same basic problem we still face. What do you do when someone you depend on can no longer function as they once did? The answer was not necessarily to stop expecting them to contribute. The answer may have been to change the kind of contribution they made. Ancient old age probably did not involve retirement. Older people still worked. They gathered plants, processed food, repaired equipment, prepared animal hides, maintained fires, watched children, and passed on skills. These jobs required patience, knowledge, and experience more than speed. Older women may have remained especially valuable as gatherers and caregivers. Research among some modern foraging societies shows that grandmothers can collect difficult foods and share them with younger relatives. They may also reduce the workload of parents by looking after children. A grandmother watching a child does not look as dramatic as someone throwing a spear into a mammoth, but it gives the child's mother time to gather food, care for another infant, recover physically, or contribute elsewhere. A quiet hour of childcare can feed a family just as effectively as one spectacular hunting scene. It simply has worse cinematic lighting. Older men could also remain useful. Hunting ability is not just about running quickly or throwing something hard. It requires tracking, patience, knowledge of animal behavior, and familiarity with the terrain. A younger hunter may have stronger legs. An older hunter may know exactly where the animals will run when frightened. Even when physical hunting became difficult, older people could still make tools, repair weapons, butcher animals, advise hunters, and teach younger group members. The prehistoric economy was not divided into hunter and useless. There were hundreds of jobs between those two categories, and one of the most important may have been helping raise the next generation. Human women often live for decades after menopause. That is unusual among mammals. One possible explanation is known as the grandmother hypothesis. The basic idea is that older women increased the survival of their descendants. They gathered food, cared for children, shared knowledge, and allowed their daughters to raise more offspring successfully. Over many generations, families containing helpful, long-lived grandmothers may have had an advantage. This is still a hypothesis. Human longevity probably evolved through several connected pressures, not one prehistoric grandmother distributing roots and single-handedly redesigning the species. But the idea reveals something important. Evolution does not only reward the person having children, it can also reward the people who help those children survive. An older woman may no longer have been producing children herself, but she could still improve the survival of her grandchildren. That made old age valuable in a new way. It became part of the group's reproductive strategy. But we should not turn prehistoric life into a heartwarming family movie, because care had limits, and old age could still become brutal. Old age would have been painful. Arthritis, worn teeth, hearing loss, reduced vision, and old injuries affected whether someone could walk, eat, sleep, and keep pace with the group. There were no effective painkillers, there was no surgery for a damaged hip, there was no dentist carefully explaining that this might feel like a little pressure. Care also required resources. A group facing starvation could not create food from kindness. A highly mobile community may have struggled to support someone who could no longer travel. During famine, extreme cold, disease, or conflict, vulnerable people would have faced the greatest danger. Some elderly individuals were probably cared for intensively. Others may have received only the help their group could afford. And some may have been left behind when continuing to support them threatened everyone else. We cannot know how often that happened. The evidence does not give us a single ancient policy. There was no prehistoric office issuing a document called Guidelines for Grandfather. Different communities faced different conditions. A settled group with reliable food could provide more care. A small group fleeing danger may have had fewer options. Ancient humans could be cooperative and compassionate. They also lived in a world where one failed hunt could become a crisis. Both things can be true. So, how did ancient humans deal with old age? They adapted. When physical strength declined, a person's role changed. When older adults could no longer hunt, they gathered, repaired, watched, taught, remembered, and advised. When they could no longer care for themselves completely, others sometimes helped them. Not because ancient life was gentle. It absolutely was not. But survival was never an individual sport. The toothless individual at Dmanisi survived. Shanidar 1 survived. Older adults continued producing food, caring for children, passing on skills, and carrying information that could not be stored anywhere else. And as more humans began living into old age, each generation gained access to a longer past. Knowledge stopped dying with the young. A tool-making method could be refined across decades. A migration route could be remembered. A drought could become a warning instead of a surprise. A disaster could become a story that prevented the next generation from repeating it. Old people became links between experiences that no single younger person could possess. The group kept the elder alive, and the elder carried part of the group's world inside their mind. Before books, writing, maps, schools, or recorded history, that was the closest thing humanity had to a library. And sometimes, during a drought, a dangerous winter, or a journey into unfamiliar land, the oldest person in the group may have been the only one who already knew how the story ended.